in the both the speed, the processor speed as well as the main memory speed. So actually it will not work because your processor needed a data at the speed of 10 raised to minus 12, but your main memory cannot provide the data at the speed of 10 raised to minus 12 per second because it's a limitation that is 10 raised to minus 9 per second. But today's, if you see the today's DDR RAM, which works at the speed of 10 raised to minus 12 per second, but still the cache required. Why the cache required? Already I told you this answer because our today's computer you will find there is a multiprocessor. Each computer there are multiple processors are there. So multiple processors are there. So multiple processor P1, P2, P3, P4. So these all these processor executing your instruction at the same time. So at the same time they needed the data at the speed of 10 raised to minus 12 per second. But again, your main memory is working at the 10 raised to minus 12 per second. But each processor needed the data. So again, the synchronization is not possible in between the processor and the main memory. So even our today's DDR is working at the speed of 10 raised to minus 12 per second, but still you will find there is a cache memory is there. So again, here there is another level of memory that is a cache memory. So this is a cache memory. We have seen how actually the cache memory is made of, like we have seen the SRAM. In SRAM, uh, whatever the technique that we have seen, that is used in cache memory, and DRAM, which is used in main memory. Obviously, in SRAM, we have seen the multiple components required, like 6 transistors are required. So, but here in main memory, there is only one transistor and one capacitor required. Here, 2 capacitors, 6 transistors. So, multiple transistors required in SRAM. So, obviously, the cost of SRAM is more than DRAM. So, DRAM is used in main memory, SRAM is in the cache. By the technology wise, you can understand by this way. Here, the main memory, the cost is less compared to the cache. But again, here you will find the cache speed is less than the processor speed. Here again, the synchronization is not possible. So there is one more level is added here, that is a resistor. So we can see CPU. Sorry, actually, I don't know why actually today it is creating a problem. So we have seen there is multiple levels are there, like register. Register is working at very high speed. Again, there is another level that is a cache. So cache is comparatively the speed is less in the cache. Again, if you will compare with the cache, the main memory, so main memory RAM having a less speed than the cache, and again main memory to the hard disk. So here is the hard disk. So hard disk is there, or we can say secondary storage. So in the hierarchy, actually you will find the multiple memory in the computer. So it is very easy to understand. Here the speed wise, the register having the highest speed and your hard disk having the lowest speed. But if the cost wise, it is simply like this way actually you can understand. The speed, if you see the speed is high, if the speed is high, the cost is also high. And the speed is low, the cost is also low. So here, the hard disk, the, the speed is less, cost is less, right? So obviously the cost is less, you can store more data in hard disk. Comparatively, you can understand all these different types of memory. So now, how actually your data transmitted? So we have seen the concept of uh, how your data transfer data into the main memory, into the RAM. We have seen the concept of that is the paging, segmentation, like your actually the whole data is not transmitted to the main memory, right? We have seen this concept in our last lecture. Only the required data. For example, the processor want the 1 byte of data. What we will do, we will add the nearest data as the data which is required into the main memory, because we have discussed this concept, that is locality of reference. What kind of byte of data is added into the main memory which is required to the CPU, as well as which is nearby the required byte. For example, if you are, I am asked, 4 or 5 students have participated in gathering for the dance, and if one teacher is asking for, one teacher ask one of the member to call, right? So what the another person will do, he will call all 4 or 5 students, because the teacher is asking one student, he may ask the another student too, because all the students have participated in the gathering for the dance, right? So that way you can understand the locality of reference. Like the CPU is asking for this byte, right? But the nearby bytes also added into the main memory. So this concept, that is paging and segmentation, we have seen. So the part of the data is added here. So for example, these pages are filled here, right? These pages are filled. Now the cache again, why actually the part of data we have added? Because the size is less. The RAM size is less, obviously, compared to the hard disk. Like your hard disk is, for example, 1 TB, your RAM is maybe, for example, 4 GB, right? So the size is less. Again, you cannot transfer your complete whatever data here in a main memory, complete data into the cache, because again the cache size is less, right? So what we can do, we will transfer the required byte of data into the cache, right? So in this way, the part of data we will put it into the cache, right? Again here, if you compare the cache and the register, you will find the cache having bigger memory than the register. So again, what we will do here, we will put the required byte or required instruction into the cache, sorry, into the register, right? And then the processor will take required instruction from the register. So see here, the hierarchy of the memory, like the cost wise and the speed wise, we have maintained this kind of different types of memory. So now here, uh, suppose CPU want a particular instruction or the data. So the processor check the required data into the cache. If required element present in the cache, then it is called a cache hit. Cache hit. Processor want the particular element from the cache, and the processor look up the particular element into the cache, and if the element is there, so that time we can say it is a cache hit. The second one is hit latency. Hit latency. What is a hit latency? Like a required element is available or not required uh, hit latency. So the processor want a particular element and it is in the cache, right? So the element is there, it is available. So the cache hit. Then to access that element, some time is required. Some time is required if the element is there and if you want to access that element. So you have to uh, send a request, then the particular element transfer to the register, and then the processor can access. So it will take a time. So that is called hit latency. Suppose if the CPU want a particular element. Earlier, actually, the element was present over there. But now this time the element is not present. So that time we can say it is a cache miss. Cache miss. Cache means cache miss. It means required element is not present. Processor want a particular element, but it is not present. So that time we can say it is a cache miss. Now the element is not present in the cache. Then what we have to do? We have to transfer that element from the main memory, obviously. So we have to check that element is present in the main memory or not, right? So as in the last lecture, we have seen this concept, that is a page table. So from the page table, we get this information that required element is present or not, right? So, so next concept is that is a miss latency. Miss latency. What is a miss latency? Suppose the element is not present in a cache, we have to load that element from the main memory. So get that element from the secondary memory. That time we can say it is a miss latency. The next one is a page fault. Page fault. What is a page fault? So suppose as we have discussed earlier for the miss latency, you want a particular element in the cache, the processor want a particular element in a cache, but it is not available in the cache, then you look up that element into the main memory. That is your miss latency. Okay, so you are looking into the secondary uh, in the main memory. If it is not there, if it is not present in the main memory, then we'll look up into the secondary storage, right? So if it is not present in main memory, that time we can say it is a page fault. But it is not present in the main memory, then is, we can say it is a page fault. The next one is that is a page hit. Page hit. Page hit means it is present in a main memory or not. So if it is, we'll check this if it is that element is present in the main memory or not. If it is present over there, so we have to transfer that element into the cache. So in the last lecture, we have discussed your data. If your data is in the hard disk, we have to transfer our data into the main memory in the form of pages. It is divided into the pages and it is transferred into the pages. But what about main memory to the cache? So actually to look up a particular page, we follow a tag, right? If the tag direct us to look up a particular tag into the cache, and the page table required to check the element is present into the main memory or not. Obviously, while doing all these things, some time required. That is page fault service time. Page fault service time, it means as we have discussed, if the page is not available in cache, then you are looking into the main memory and then uh, through the page table. And if it is not available in the main memory, then uh, you are looking into the secondary storage and then you are accessing. So get the data from the hard disk to main memory. If it is not available to the main memory, so actually it will take a time, right? So that time we can say it is a page fault service time because you want a particular element of data, but it is not there in the cache. So you are accessing the main memory and after main memory to the secondary storage. Okay. So my question is to you, why actually there is a different level of hierarchy? Why directly we are not accessing our data from the main memory? Kindly post your answer through the chat box. Why the processor is not directly accessing the data from the secondary storage? Why there is a hierarchy of the memory like main memory, cache, register? Why? Do acknowledge in chat box. What is the reason? Obviously, if it is, there is no any kind of hierarchy directly if your processor is connected with the hard disk, so the page fault service time is not required. Are you there? Are you with me? Why there is a hierarchy? Why there is this kind of hierarchy of memory is there? Why the processor is not directly connected with the hard disk? क्यों डायरेक्टली प्रोसेसर हार्ड डिस्क से डेटा नहीं ले रहा है? क्यों मल्टीपल हिराची मेमोरी हमने वहाँ पे बनाई गई है, रजिस्टर है, कैचे है, देन रैम है, देन दिस योर हार्ड डिस्क? व्हाट इज द रीजन? To reduce cost. The reason is to reduce cost, right? Because here the register is more costlier than your cache. Again, the cache is more costlier than your main memory. Main memory is more costlier than the hard disk, right? So to reduce the cost, there is a hierarchy of memory. We have seen the SRAM and DRAM, the difference. Again in DRAM, only two components are required to store one bit, one transistor and one capacitor. But here in SRAM, the multiple transistor, 6 transistor, two capacitor required, right? So again, to store one bit, more space required. So it's a cache. You cannot store the 4 GB data, 6 GB data, 8 GB data in the same size that you can store in to the main memory. So the multiple reasons are there, but the main reason is the cost. Did you understand why there is this kind of hierarchy is there? Did you understand why there is this kind of hierarchy is there? Okay. So the next concept is that is locality of reference. Locality of reference. So already here we have discussed about the locality of reference. Like the CPU want one element, but because of the locality of reference concept, we will transfer the nearby element also into the main memory. So there is two types of locality of reference. One is spatial locality, and the second one is temporal locality. So what is a spatial locality? Spatial locality means a particular element is close to proximity to earlier element. Like this spatial locality, it means here is the multiple elements are there. These are the multiple elements are there. And if the processor want this particular element, but what actually we are doing by the spatial locality, you want this particular element, but close to proximity of this earlier element is this one as well as this one. So what we will do, we will copy all these three elements into the main memory. So that is the your spatial locality. So the nearby element also we copy into the main memory. That is the spatial locality. And temporal locality, it means the latest element, the latest referred element may again used. For example, this is the element that is latestly referred. So we will keep into the main memory because it may happen after a period of time. Again, the processor may use this element. Okay. So that is the second type in the locality of reference. That is a temporal locality. Okay. So did you understand this cache memory concept? Did you understand this cache memory concept? Kindly to acknowledge. So in a hard disk, you will find there is the multiple disk. Like you will actually this kind of disk you will find 4 to 100s of disk into the hard disk. So this is called a plotter. These are the plotter. You might have seen the CD, right? So like a CD, this kind of disks are there in the hard disk, and all the disks rotate with the help of splinter, clockwise or anti-clockwise, unidirection, directional way, either at one side. So the motor is attached here, and it rotates either clockwise or anti-clockwise. How we read the data from this disk, from this platter. So here you will find there is one access arm. So this access arm is there who read the data. So this kind of access arm is attached. All the access arm at the same line. This one arm is there only. It is by mistake actually. Multiple times I drawn because it should be in the same line. So in this way, the access arm is there. Access arm to read the data. Head assembly. So this head move on the flutter to read the data or to write the data. If you see about this one plotter, so I will take this one plotter here. So in the plotter, you will find the multiple tracks. So these are the nothing but the track. These are the track. And this plotter is coated with the magnetic material. This plotter is coated with magnetic material. So black color you could see on a desk because it is coated with the magnetic material, and this is the surface of this plotter. So actually it is coated with at the top side and the bottom side. So two surface, we are getting two surface. So this is surface one and this is the surface two. So actually either you can write or read from the top as well as from the bottom. So both because it is coated both the surface, the top surface as well as bottom surface. So obviously two heads are provided to read the data from both the side. Obviously from the top side and from the bottom side. That's why actually I have head say from this plotter. Yes, two surfaces. Now again there is multiple arms are it this as in the same so as we are discussing about this one plotter and all these arms are there and at both the surface there is one arm. So each plotter having two surfaces, obviously two arms are there. All the arms move either at the front side or the back side and at the same position. So equally we can say it is one kind of cylinder. This is one cylinder. So at the same time we can read the data or the write the data into the track. What is actually track? So about this is one disk like this is the one plotter is there, and as we have seen each every plotter there is a tracks. So these are the multiple tracks are there. So these are the tracks are there, and in this way actually it is divided. And this one portion is called sector. So this is the sector which store your bit. So actually we have to verify our data. Whatever data in one sector, we have to verify the data. So, and as at the same time, we have to uh, at the same time, actually we have to assign, identify the sector, when the sector started and when the sector finished. So at the end of the every sector, there is one sector bit. So by this sector bit, we can easily identify when it is started and when it is finished. So because of this sector bit, the access arm can easily understand. It is the head can easily read the sector, like here it is finished. So at the every sector, you will find there is a sector bit. And this sector bit, from the sector bit, we can easily recognize the sector started and when the sector finished. Again, if the error may occur, the bit may change. For that purpose, there is a parity bit is also there. So parity bit or the sector bit is used to identify if the error is occur or not. Right. So this sector bit is used to recognize the sector started, sector finished, as well as it is we can use it as a parity bit. So parity bit for to identify the error is occurred or not. In Hamming code, we have seen how actually you can easily you can by that way you can understand the working of parity bit. So as we have seen in the magnetic disk, there is a multiple plotters are there. Each plotter is divided, uh, each plotter having two surfaces coated with the magnetic material, and there is these are the tracks on the plotter. So these tracks are divided into the sector, and there is a sector bit. So suppose if you want to measure the disk capacity, or anyone can ask with a question based on calculate the disk capacity. So how actually we can calculate the disk capacity? The very simple formula is there to calculate the disk capacity. That is the number of plotters. Disk capacity is depends upon number of plotters, right? Obviously, how many platters are there? How many platters are there? So the number of platters, for example, four platters are there. So 4 into, here again we have seen this is the one surface. So at one surface there is a multiple tracks are there. Here you will find thousands of tracks. On one surface you will find thousands of tracks. So even it is given like tracks per surface because at each uh, platters having two surfaces. Okay, so number of platters into tracks per surface into sectors per track, right? So these are the sectors. So how many sectors per track? Okay, so this also we have to count. So how many sectors per track? Again into byte per sector. So by this way, actually, this is the formula that you have to note down. By this formula, you can solve any kind of problem. Like if in the problem, it is asked like how many tracks are there. So you can easily count like number of platters into the tracks. And suppose the sectors are asked, how many sectors are there? So the formula is number of platters into tracks per surface into the sectors. And similarly, how many byte or how many bit of data it carry. So you have to use this formula. Number of platters into track per surface into sectors per track, sectors per track into byte per sector. By these way, actually, we can easily calculate how many byte the hard disk can hold, how many bytes of data this hard disk can hold. Okay, so this is a simple explanation of the magnetic disk. We'll see one video based on that you can easily understand. The next is that is a magnetic tape. Okay, magnetic tape. I hope all you have seen the magnetic tape, right? Very popular. Everyone might have seen this magnetic tape. So the magnetic tape, the main material is this tape. So it is, we can say it is a, uh, polythene tape is there, and which is coated with the magnetic material. So again, in the magnetic disk, a disk is coated with the magnet. Here is a magnetic tape and coated with the magnetic material. How actually it works? So again, you might have seen, you can either record into this magnetic tape, or either you can read the data from the magnetic tape. So there is a two heads are given. This two head. One is for the recording purpose, and second one is to read purpose. Okay. So it is connected with one simple record amplifier or to reproduce amplifier. So record amplifier, simply you are giving an input, and accordingly record amplifier, there is one coil is there, one tag is there, which will simply changes the bits on the magnetic tape as per uh, as per the data. As we know, your data is stored in the form of bits only, either 1 or 0. So accordingly, it changes here. And the reader, whatever data is there, based on the magnetic field, North Pole and South Pole, is simply read the data, 1 or 0, and it provide to the amplifier, and in this way actually we produce output. So there is a magnetic head which read the data as well as we can write the data. So in the head, you can find this kind of one coil is there and one flux is there. So it is here, this is a recording. Uh, uh, this is for the recording and this is for the reading the data. So this is recording head and this is the reading head. So this recording head you will find this tape is magnetic coated, but it is the blank. All the bits are either 0, and with the help of this head, recording head, what we are doing, we're changing this magnetic field, either North Pole or South Pole, based on the bit. So a signal is transmitted in the coil, and based on the current flow, either for the forward direction or the backwards direction, accordingly, it changes the pole here, North Pole or South Pole. For example, North Pole 1 bit and South Pole is 0 bit. So accordingly, as per the bit, it changes here. And here it read the data. Based on the North Pole is there or South Pole is there, the current flows either forward or backward. And in this way, the signal is generated. So we have 3 minutes. So in 3 minutes, we can see this video, that is magnetism, data storage. how it works?
Magnetic memory, or magnetic data storage, is a key component in computer operation. This depends on the ability of magnets to magnetize other materials and the ability of those materials to retain their magnetization until forced to change again by exposure to another magnetic field. Furthermore, an object can be magnetized with the north or south pole at either end. You may already know that data is stored in computers in a series of ones and zeros. Computer operation. This depends on the ability of magnets to magnetize other materials and the ability of those materials to retain their magnetization until forced to change again by exposure to another magnetic field. Furthermore, an object can be magnetized with the north or south pole at either end. You may already know that data is stored in computers in a series of ones and zeros, a machine language more commonly known as binary code. But how can we represent a 1 and a 0 magnetically? Let's take a look.
A bit is the smallest unit of data storage. It can be visualized as a minuscule block that can be magnetized into a permanent magnet. Every red, blue, or gray block in this picture is a bit. The red blocks have north poles facing up, and the blue blocks have north poles facing down. These are what the computer recognizes as ones and zeros. Gray blocks are the empty bits that have not yet been magnetized. The right head is basically an electromagnet with a core appropriately shaped like this to direct the magnetic field into a bit and magnetize it as it passes by. It can magnetize a bit as a north facing up or a north facing down, simply by changing the direction of the current in the coil. As you may remember from the earlier sections, reversing the direction of current in an electromagnet results in reversing the direction of the magnetic field. Once written, the bits can be read by the read head, which senses the direction of the magnetic field as it goes over a written bit. A hard drive as a whole looks like this. Both the read head and write head are at the tip of the actuator arm. The motor of the disk and the motor of the actuator arm work collaboratively to align a desired bit with the read head or the write head at any given time to read it or write it.
A few years ago, an iPod of this size had the capacity of about 1 gigabyte. But now, a similarly sized iPod has the capacity of about 160 gigabytes. With each passing day, capacity just keeps growing more and more. But have you ever wondered how they can increase the capacity so many times without increasing the size? Let's take a closer look.